Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
It is time for our Outdoor Tidbits with our conservation warden buddy, Mr. Jake Bolks. Jake, how we doing on this fine Thursday morning?
It is a beautiful Thursday morning.
Absolutely.
I'm lucky enough to have a free morning here, so I'm actually going down to kind of help on my hunting land, clear some trails and stuff, and it's a beautiful day in the bluffs.
Well, be sure you be careful of the wood ticks out there and the deer ticks.
I pulled one off after Little League the other night.
Yeah, they're all over, so
right,
be careful of that. Hey,
yeah,
Jake, with all this rain,
thick.
They are. With all this rain we've had, what's the status of, are we getting any spots that you've seen that are a little dangerous as far as high water that aren't traditionally that high?
Not necessarily around here. Where the water's high, water usually goes to the same spot. So, that Chippewa River, obviously the Eau Claire River, Chippewa River, they're just flowing right now. I haven't looked at the graphs on the river levels and such, but if you drive over, I-94 bridge or Short Street Bridge in town, you're going to see that the water is cooking. So you definitely want to be aware of that if you have any water plans for the weekend, whether it's boating or fishing or going to the beach.
Mm-hmm. With boat safety too, Jake, maybe a good reminder with all that, life jackets and such. What are the laws? What are the rules with that? Do people have to wear them? Do they have to just be in the boat, or what's the recommendation from you guys?
Yeah, so in Wisconsin, and you got to make sure no matter where you go, you got to follow, or you got to look into that state or federal system's rules. Because in Wisconsin, the rule is every person on board a watercraft, so that's a motorboat, that's a paddleboard, a kayak, a canoe, every person has to have one wearable life jacket on, on board with them. So doesn't mean you have to wear it. There's no minimum age, like helmets on an ATV. Anyone under 18 has to wear one. On a boat, everyone has to have a life jacket, but if you're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, you don't have to wear it. Obviously, as a parent and as a warden, I'd say put that on your kids. Even if you're an adult or you're, having a couple of beers or whatever, wear a life jacket because, accidents, you don't wake up and say, I'm going to have an accident, or I'm going to wake up and fall out of my boat, or I'm going to have a medical emergency and fall out of my boat. So if you have one on, it's always that much safer. So just have to have one on the boat. And then with, the high water, like we're talking about, obviously there's all the equipment stuff with your boat, have it registered, make sure everything's up to date on the regulations. But something to note, like if you are going on the rivers and you're not used to these high waters, stuff can happen very fast on a river, especially when the water's flowing like this. What you might usually take a couple minutes to float down might be 30 seconds, or when you think you're going to come to a corner or you don't think the water's that strong, it's going to push your boat right into the side of the river or into a tree in the middle of the river or whatever. So you just really want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and you're really paying attention when you're on these fast-moving water bodies, because the fast water can really be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Jake, with that, since we're talking about boating and such, and I don't think there's one around here, but I saw a press release that this weekend the DNR is having their first invasive species awareness day, and different events and stuff going on over the weekend. But like for invasive species, can you kind of give us maybe a little bit of a refresher on what that is? Because I know for boats, right, you wanna wash off everything at the boat landing, correct?
Yeah, so when it comes to boating and invasive species, the big thing is the weeds in the water. So the law is that you can't transport anything away from the shoreline or the boat launch or landing, whether that's in a bucket, in a boat, in your car, stuff like that. So, if you're down on the lake or, and this is anywhere in the state, it's not just certain waters, it's anywhere in the state. So if you're down on the river, you're down at a lake, and you catch a bunch of bluegill, you throw them in a bucket, and you take water from the lake, technically, if you don't dump that water out, you're in violation of transporting that water. When you're in a boat, if you have your live well full, once you pull up at the boat landing, drain that live well and then transport it. Make sure you pull the plug on your boat so there's no water. And then make sure you get down and actually check for weeds under your boat. The amount of people we pull over on Claremont or on I-94 or whatever because they got weeds hanging, and it was simply because they said, they were too lazy to get up, down on their knees and rip the weeds off from the center of the trailer. It's like a $340 ticket for transporting weeds and stuff like that. And the big thing is, like, we don't know. You might know you're going to your house, but you never know what's in your ballast tanks. You never know what's in your live well when it comes to, like, these microscopic invasive species. And you don't know how long they can live. So even if you think you're just going to your house and then the next day they go into a different lake or whatever, you just don't know what these plants and animals are going to do. So you gotta take them all off your boat, off your trailer, stuff like that, so we don't transport it around the state.
So is it okay, when somebody pulls their plug on their boat and they're driving? I mean, we've all probably seen it. The water's draining on the road as they're driving. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine. You pull it out at the landing. Sometimes just like the elevation or the angle, you're not going to be able to get all that water out. So as you pull away, it's going to drip out and drain, and that's totally fine. What we do see sometimes, and you'll get pulled over for this, is once in a while we're driving behind a boat and you see water coming out the side of the boat, not like where the plug is. Usually the live well has like not in every boat, but some boats, like the live well, has their tank release kind of out on the side of the boat. And if we see water coming out the side higher up, then we know there's water in the boat, and you're likely going to get pulled over for that, for transporting water away from a water body. So it might seem kind of ridiculous, but there's parts of the state, and there's very nice water bodies that have been negatively affected and damaged beyond repair because of just a simple boat coming into with an invasive species. So it's really important. It's something that the state and the public and volunteers have worked hard on to try to remove invasive species from lakes and rivers and stuff like that. So it's important to do your part and try not to transport.
Are we getting better with the zebra mussels? For years, that was always the headline when you take your boat out. Zebra mussels, Zebra mussels. Are they still such a problem?
Yeah, they kind of are. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say it's like CWD, where just over time, it's obviously CWD, it's still a big thing, but how big it was back in 2000 or 2002, whenever it was first found. It was a lot more on people's minds, and now people are living with it a little bit more than usual. There's definitely, in different areas it's worse. In other areas it's better. For example, like Half Moon Lake, volunteers in the state have worked really, really hard to remove all the invasive species out of Half Moon Lake. So it's actually a very clean, nice lake. The Chippewa River is one of the best rivers in the state, actually, when it comes to lack of invasive species and native mussel populations and other fish populations, that in the St. Croix. Like, we got some really good waters around here. So it's a cool day to have to promote it and just try to help remind people to help do their part to not transport that. And, we're talking about boats and trailers and stuff, but you could apply to just about anything, duck hunting or different terrestrial invasive species when you're doing other activities, hunting, fishing, trapping.
I know it was this past week or past weekend or such, but maybe a reminder out there too that the northern zone for smallmouth bass harvest began back on the 15th a few days ago.
Yeah, that's about, I think, I don't have the regulations up in front of me, but that's going to be one of the very last seasons that opens up for fishing. So we're getting into that time of year, kind of like the fall for hunting. We're getting to that time of year where you can basically go out and somewhere in the state fish and harvest probably almost every fish minus like sturgeon or paddlefish. So there's a lot of opportunity here to get out and fish different species or harvest different species, or just get out and go fishing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Bob, did you have anything before we let Jake go on his off day?
No, I think we don't want to hold him up if he wants to go.
Oh no, you're good. I'm still going to work this afternoon. It's kind of the joys of the job is you can kind of shift the schedule around a little bit. But I had an opportunity to go meet up with my uncle and mow some land and take care of that, before it gets too overgrown. So It's a beautiful day, and to be honest, I mean, you guys have seen it. It's like the one morning it's not raining, it seems like.
Isn't it somehow we've come from this spring fire, be careful.
Right.
Now we've got so much rain and green that it's not a challenge.
Oh yeah,
Still got to be careful,
it's
but
so dry. Yeah, no, you still got to be careful. You're right, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rain.
Yeah,
and even further north, it's raining even more.
Well, compared to last year when we were talking about low river levels and being safe out here, a little bit different this year.
It's crazy how it fluctuates so much. I mean, you're right. Last year we talked about the high river, everything was closed, and then it was low, and this year starts out low, but now it's high. And it's only June 20th or whatever. We'll see where the summer takes us.
And again, as our campers go from home to wherever, buy your firewood at the site, not bring it from wherever.
Yep, 10 miles. 10 miles is supposed to be where you buy it from. I'm pretty sure every campground that hosts camping has some sort of wood selling operation on site, and if not, or it's closed, those neighbors take advantage of it in a good way, and they have a lot of different options around those state parks and county parks. So
how often do you check? How often will you check a campsite and see, and how do you tell it this maple wood didn't come from Dane County versus Dunn County?
Or is that like a Forest Service sort of thing?
Yeah, so, it all depends. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, when a truck from Iowa comes in full of wood, where it's obviously like cut, it's not cut up and split like, someone would locally, and locally, there's always the places that they just kind of split it up and put it in a rack and say, one armful is $5 or whatever. But a lot of places have them, pre-wrapped in plastic, and they have some sort of flyer business on there to promote it, or even their home stuff. So usually you can find out pretty quick or you can take a look at it and notice. Sometimes we get complaints from, park staff or campers, but generally, there's the wardens that do the law enforcement at the parks, and the park rangers are still there, and they're kind of helping police that and having educational contacts with staff. If it does get seized, it gets bagged up and destroyed, so there's no risk of spreading any potential invasive species in that wood.
How do you prove that? Say, okay, I'm going to camp at Lake Wissota State Park, and I'm coming from down south, and I stop outside the park someplace and buy a couple of bundles of firewood. When I go in, and the ranger, the warden, looks and said, "Where'd that firewood come from?" I said, "Right out here." Prove it. How do you prove it?
Typically, we're not banging open up everybody's truck beds and checking in this and that. Obviously there's a lot of, good sportsmen, good campers, good stuff like that. But, the best way that we check is just have a simple conversation. Generally, we can tell we do this job where we talk to people every day. So if someone says, on our way in, we took a left up off of whatever, County Road O, and there's a guy selling wood there, and we bought a couple bundles, and you look and you check out. Everything seems to check out, and their behavior is normal. There's no reason for us to push it. But, if someone comes in and they're like, well, we just got it somewhere out there, and you're like, well, where? And they can't really provide anything. And then you start talking, and, you can kind of differentiate whether you need to kind of push them a little bit more or just...
What's the fine? What's the fine for that?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I haven't.
But there is a fine.
Oh, there's definitely a fine, and in Wisconsin, every single ticket, minus like the CPO ticket, starts with like a $137.50 court costs, and then usually the DNR ticket's actually only like $20 or $50 or $100 or something. It's probably going to be around that 200 mark to start, but it can always everything can kind of go up from there.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that shortens up the beer supply.
But it is a lot. A $6 piece of wood versus a $200 ticket. It's
that's
not
for sure.
I'd rather just buy the $6 piece of wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Jake,
that's a good point.
Yeah, Jake, we appreciate the time, man. We'll be safe out there, buddy. Enjoy the weather while it lasts here, and we'll catch up with you again next week. Okay?
Yeah, maybe we'll hit on it next week. But while I'm sitting down here, I just literally 10 feet in front of my truck here, I just had 2 fawns walk across the road. So it's definitely fawn season. So watch for them when you're mowing, and if you need anything, just leave them where they're at. But maybe we'll hit on some fawn stuff next week again.
Perfect. Sounds good. Jake, appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Have a great one, guys.
You too. There you go. Jake Bolks, our conservation warden buddy for the great state of Wisconsin for our Outdoor Tidbits.